We see the potential in Ukraine. Russia by contrast, sees the risk. Supporting Ukraine is the right thing to do. It's also the smart thing to do. If Russia prevails and Ukraine falls to Russian dominion, we can expect to see other attempts by Russia to expand its territory and its influence.
Long before Vladimir Putin's full invasion of Ukraine, made the rest of us so fluent in that country's affairs, Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch was an advocate for Ukraine's potential and a truth teller on the topic of Russia's aggression and potential. Her testimony in Donald Trump's first impeachment trial was more than 3 years ago now, practically a lifetime in American politics these days, considering all that has taken place since and all that she was right about. We could have known in such a short time that the Biden administration would today, in fact, seek to reaffirm American support for Ukraine more than a year after a full-scale Russian invasion. In an unannounced trip to Kyiv, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said she brought a message from President Joe Biden that the United States would stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Let's bring into our coverage former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, author of the book Lessons from the Edge. She just returned from Ukraine as the country marked 1 year since Russia's invasion. First, tell us about your trip. You were there around at the same time that the president was there. Tell us about this week that we, from our distance, marked as the 1 year anniversary of this horrible war, but you were there.
Yeah, so I wasn't there at exactly the same time. I was there for the actual anniversary on the 23rd and the 24th of February, and I was in Kyiv, the capital. And it was, it was incredible to be with the Ukrainian people who are just as resolute as they were on February 24th of last year, and have been throughout the last year. They are unified, they are strong, and they are confident of victory. But they are also tired, and they are fighting for their freedom. They're fighting for their families. They're fighting for our freedom as well. And they are grateful for the assistance that we're providing, grateful that President Biden was there, that Secretary Yellen is there today, that members of Congress were there last week, bipartisan group at that. But they need more assistance from us. And so while I do believe that the Biden administration has done an amazing job, we would not have predicted how much assistance and how strong the measures were a year ago today. But here we are, but it's still not enough. And so as reassuring as that slogan, as long as it takes, is, I think we need to update it to, providing as much assistance as quickly as possible so that Ukraine can win. I think that's where we need to be right now. We need to back it up by action.
The Ukrainians have proven themselves incredibly astute readers of American domestic politics, the good, the bad, and the ugly, which you saw up close and personal. What are your concerns as we head into a presidential election cycle in this country?
Yeah, well, American politics can be very volatile, as you've just pointed out. And so while I think that there is bipartisan consensus to support Ukraine, it is, and there has been since 1991, since independence, and especially so since 2014, which actually marks the invasion, the 9-year old invasion by Russia of Ukraine. But I think, staying united here in the United States, as well as with our allies, is going to continue to be a challenge. It's always a challenge, but it is especially harder, obviously, during times of elections. And there are not only U.S. presidential elections in 2024, there are also maybe Ukrainian presidential elections, depending on the state of martial law and the state of the war, and presidential elections in Russia. So it's going to be a big year.
Is there anything about either Russia's poor performance on the battlefield and the brazenness with which Putin has rewarded the units that carried out war crimes in Bucha that shocked the world? Is there anything about Russia's performance or Zelensky seeming to exceed the expectations of American political leaders? Is there anything on either side of the equation that surprised you?
Well, I think that I was certainly surprised by the lackluster, shall we say, performance of the Russian military. I was not expecting that. While I knew that the Ukrainian forces would fight back, while I knew that Ukrainian society would support them 150%, this is a completely mobilized society where everybody is doing, basically whatever it takes, not because somebody tells them to do it, but because they see a task and they move to do it because that is what is for the general good. It's really, frankly, inspiring. So I knew that that would be the case, but I didn't realize how strong and unified the Ukrainians really would be and how effective, and that it would take them into a year and counting in this existential struggle against Russia. Similarly with Zelensky, I mean, this is a role of a lifetime, not to make light of what he's doing. And he has stepped into those big shoes of being the wartime leader that Ukraine and frankly the world needs in this important struggle. And I think, hats off to him for not only inspiring the Ukrainian people in the world, but also reflecting the will of the Ukrainian people. I mean, Ukraine is a democracy. It's a struggling democracy, as all democracies are. But he is very much in tune with the people, and the people are very much in tune with him. And you can see that, in his nightly addresses, in his policy positions, and frankly, in his outstanding and inspirational leadership.
You would know better than me, but I know some Ukrainians seek to keep their ties to the American people bound up in this idea that we were once where they are, fighting for our own freedom, fighting for our own democracy. And when you see President Biden in Kyiv, it is a stand, obviously, for Zelensky and with the people of Ukraine, but it is for democracy. What work do you think needs to be done in this country to make sure that all of the American people understand that this isn't just Ukraine fighting to protect its country from Russian aggression and invasion, but this is a fellow democracy in an existential fight against an adversary that seeks to erase it, and that is a fight we're having at a more sort of under the surface level in our own country?
Yeah. That is such an important question. And I think we need to continue to make the effort to explain what this fight is all about to the American people and to other world publics, because as you point out, this is about a totalitarian regime invading a democracy with no pretext. Just, they can do it because they're bigger, and so they're going to do it. It is in our interests to have more democracies in the world. This is, kind of the cliche, but it's actually true because it makes the world safer, it makes the world more prosperous, and it makes the world more secure. It's also, it's not only in our interests, it's in our security interests to see Ukraine prevail. Because if Russia is victorious in Ukraine, if Russia is rewarded with more territory that it has seized illegally because it is bigger, because it can, because the world gets tired, then Russia will take a pause and it will keep on going, just as it did after Georgia in 2008, just as it did after the beginning of this war in 2014. And that means that at some future point, we would have to deal with Russia at a time and a place perhaps not of our choosing and perhaps not to our advantage. It is to our advantage to help Ukraine prevail right now in Ukraine. We are, frankly, the Ukrainians are fighting for us. They are not asking us to put boots on the ground. They're just asking us for security and economic assistance. And it is the bargain of the century.